Welcome to Heather Ewing, the CRE Rundown. Today I have Andrew Rosenberg with me all the way from beautiful Hawaii. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you so much for having me on the show, Heather. Really excited to do this.
Definitely. And I've been looking forward to connecting with you. When I was reflecting on it, we met each other, about 2 years ago through LinkedIn. And it's been really nice to get to know you through that platform, just reading the posts. And you have such great information on real estate and also mindset, which is one of the reasons I really wanted to have you on the podcast.
Well, I really appreciate that, Heather. Thank you so much. I've been investing in real estate for 10 years, but, prior I'd been investing in stocks for about 30 years. And it's actually what I went to college for. So I have a degree in accounting of all things, which I don't really use and never really want to do specifically the underwriting, which is kind of a funny thing to have this degree collecting does. So yeah, it is a passion of mine. I'm surprised how much I enjoy it.
Definitely. And I think that's the really nice thing. And that's one of the common elements when I talk with other people in the real estate realm is it's really a nice compilation of both the numbers and also relationships is such an important aspect of it. And I think with COVID, with everything that happened, just really accentuating the connection through social media, LinkedIn, things like that, that it's really been a nice way to connect with people that are not next door.
Definitely. I would never have thought. Oh, excuse me. I never would have thought I would be doing Zoom podcasts, let alone the Zoom meetups. The very first one I did was Angel Williams' podcast, meetup. And I'm thinking, I don't know, this is a little wild and zany. What am I doing in a group with 20, 30 people? And we're doing these little breakout rooms. And I mean, I'm like, this is kind of out there, right? And, Dan Friedenberg is, very outgoing. He's an extrovert to the 11th power, and I'm an introvert by nature. And he made me feel comfortable. And Tony Torres was another one who's probably an introvert to extrovert only to the 10th power. And they're like, oh, no, you're fine. You're good. Let's hang out. And like, they get you talking. And then, Dan's already harassing him, hardly been on LinkedIn or, Zoom. And he's already harassing me to be on his little Meet the Person podcast that goes 8 minutes. And I'm thinking, are you insane? I just told you I'm an introvert. He's like, oh, no, you'll be fine. You'll cut your teeth. And, looking back, he was right. I mean, they're not just hanging out with your friends, but there's no big deal. It's actually quite fun. I look forward to it now, oddly enough.
Well, he is a wild brainiac, and it is fun because you just never know what he's going to have.
Oh, yeah.
Coming out and sharing.
He is a character. Yeah, that's funny. It's like most people would think, oh, you're talking with your business associate. It's going to be boring. I'm like, no. We still have a lot of fun. It's still very normal. It's just regular people hanging out, having a good time, especially once you get to know people better.
Definitely. Well, and I think too, that's the really nice thing. And I think also what helps to break down the walls between the introverts, extroverts too, is just really the focus or the intention. And, what I mean by that is that when you are focusing on sharing knowledge, helping people expand, grow, invest their money wisely, I think that's understood very clearly, especially after COVID and things, because, it's such a trying time for so many people that I think that's something that's even more important, our relationships, than they were before. Would you agree?
Oh, yes, definitely for people working at home. You kind of lose that connection with people you had in the physical office. Some people like it, but, even for me as an introvert, working from your house after a while, it's like I got to go to the mall to get lunch or something because I just want to be around people. So, yeah, it definitely has changed the world. It's just great. I mean, used to be people would go to a physical local REI meetup and you could only meet people from your town or your state, or you would have to travel to meet people. Now you could be on a conference call from people from all over the world, not even just from the United States. I mean, it's the most fascinating thing to me, how small the world is now. I'll be on a call and somebody will say, hey, does anybody know anybody who invests in Bali? And with a couple of minutes, they're already referring emails to them. I mean, it's just bizarre. You couldn't, I don't think you would anywhere near have that same ability at like a physical little local REI meetup. Not that they're not great, but it's just a different kind of thing. You're not going to really be able to say, hey, does anyone invest in Bali? And just all of a sudden finding people, you know?
Right. So it definitely reduces the barrier to entry. And when we jump into the other portion of real estate too, as far as what are you focusing on? What are you experiencing? What's something maybe that has gotten your attention that you would like to share with our guests?
I think one of the things is, a lot of my mindset stuff, as you know, is focused educationally on assumptions. And, the assumption that multifamily is somehow less risky, I find is a very interesting assumption. Is it at the wrong price, the wrong valuation? It's just as risky as any asset class. Anything mispriced is inherently risky in and of itself. And then when you throw debt into the mix, unlike, certain asset classes outside of real estate, when you throw debt into the mix, you just made something riskier. So to say, because it's apartment investing, that somehow it's safer because, people got to live somewhere. That's not really a full coherent thought. I'm not anti, I don't want anyone misreading this. This isn't an anti multi-housing thing. I'm a multi-housing investor. But the idea that it's somehow inherently less risky, I think is very dangerous if you overstate it. Particularly when you're using bridge debt, we're seeing that. And then when you use bridge debt with no rate cap, you've made what you thought in your mind was the safe investment a very speculative, risky investment. And then related to that is the idea that it's an asset. Real estate is still a business. You still have to satisfy the customers, and you have, if people don't like it, they don't renew. And people don't realize when you have tenants leave, you're so excited. Oh, it's wonderful. We get to raise the rates. We get to renovate the unit. You also don't have cash flow. You also have to, there's also the business of, filling that room with a credit-worthy tenant. So it's an actual, it's an actual business. So when some people say asset management, unfortunately, sometimes they're focusing too much on just the capital expenditures. We're going to rip out the fence around the pool and put a new fence in. Yeah, that's wonderful. Don't get me wrong. That's important stuff. But the actual running of the property in terms of how you treat your tenants and how you select them and retain them, I think a lot of newer investors miss that point. So when they're picking an operator, they're really not, they often think they can pick someone who only knows Excel. They're going to just, delegate a bunch of stuff to the day-to-day to a property manager. They're going to just do some capital improvements and then turn around and flip an asset. And you can get away with that in the bull markets. But if you notice, the operators who've been doing that for a long time, they're business owners. They're not flippers. And I'm not saying flippers with any pejorative term, but it's one thing to flip a three-bedroom, two-bath house. It's another thing to be constantly flipping a 100 or 200 unit apartment building. And flipping's great and all during a bull market, not so much during a flat or bear market.
Well, and to your point, I think there's a common misconception that whoever they have as their operations manager or that is caretaking the property, the numbers, everything, that they're dispensable, and having the right person in place in the multifamily is huge, as well as the commercial. And so I think that's where too, that they need to, like the old saying of hire hard, manage easy, of doing your due diligence on the front end so that you do have the right fit. And then that way you're not constantly bringing people in and retraining. And word gets around, right? So different landlords that do have a lot of turnover, both staff and in their housing or the commercial tenants, that you lose money.
Yeah. And then for you as a CCIM, the importance of boots on the ground and local. And I'm not saying, that a management team can't have some of the members, flying from one state to another, or that over a course of years, you can't familiarize yourself with the market. But it's just different. You know that when a person lives and works in a community, they know these magical areas of what's an A, a B, and a C. They don't need a broker to tell them that. They certainly don't need CoStar to tell them that. You can you can feel the vibe when it's different for me to get in a rental car and fly up to Madison and kind of figure out the little sub neighborhoods and what's growing and what's not and where value is coming. You just know intrinsically faster than I'm going to know because you're from that area. And so I'm always really big on when I push on people, well, who is this boots in the ground? Is it person and how are they involved? Is to me, it's if nobody is local, to me, you're just buying an asset. Locals buy businesses because they're more emotionally connected, one, to their community, and just two, they know the community better. So it's easy to say we're going to bump rents $200 a month. The locals don't come. I'm pretty sure that price. I don't think people can afford that.
Right.
That's what no offense to your broker. We always pick on brokers that the worst rental advice you can get is from a broker on price. Not you, but other brokers.
No, but
we always say CoStar is nice. But
I agree.
The property manager that actually operates properties in that market, that's really the opinion I want to hear on how high you can bump rent. Some website that's nice. That's like a baseline. Like that's the back of the napkin. Do we look at the deal? But until you've talked to actual operators in that area about pricing trends, like I'm just like, no, you're just talking all mumbo jumbo at that point.
Well, and I think what's interesting to your point, Andrew, is when you are working with a solid local broker, they have all the market knowledge from doing all the deals. And two, from a commercial standpoint with the leasing, those are not reported, right? It's easy to get the sales numbers, but you can't go in and find out the lease rate. So it's all in the broker's heads. And that's where you'll notice too, the master brokers, the bigger firms will contract smaller boutique firms such as Abstract for the boots on the ground. And a block does matter. And that's where, to me, when you look at some of these deals that were done, it doesn't matter how inexpensive the rent was, because what they're forgetting about is the revenue that they avoided, that they never received for being that one block away, or knowing the trends of who travels where, who doesn't, what the assumptions are by people that live in this area, work in the area. And to your point, it's all those little idiosyncrasies. And I think you either have a winning formula, like you mentioned, or you don't. And it's going to cost you upfront, and it's going to really cost you long term.
Oh, yeah, definitely going to cost you long term if you pick the wrong neighborhood or the wrong part of the neighborhood. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, most definitely. I found that fascinating. As a point I never thought about, but you're right. You have an amazing advantage over a multifamily broker where their data is all public and yours isn't. And so what's up here in Heather's head is really a lot more valuable. So I appreciate hearing that.
Oh, definitely.
It's very cool.
And that's why at times I do chuckle, because I'll have brokers that reach out, I'll have operators and they want to know numbers, and I just kind of smile and I'm like, happy to work with you if that's what you'd like. But yeah, that's the secret sauce that no one is going to get until, you're doing deals together, things of that nature. So it's a huge selling point. And it's also, you can have a great operator, but again, wrong spot, and they can go out of business or just not have the returns that they're anticipating and long-term shut down.
Yeah. So it is kind of funny. I mean, the first thing you learn about real estate is location, location, location. And yet somehow we stray from that because we figure, it's just this corny, cheesy old statement. I always have to remind people, like, there's a reason why for multiple generations, the same maxism has been said, and it's true. There's a reason why, because it is true. It is kind of funny. It's like sometimes we got to get back to basics. We get so caught up in fancy terms and formulas and trying to impress people with big words. And it's like, okay, I'm sorry, but like some of the simple stuff, like when you violate the basics, it usually doesn't go so good.
Right. Kind of like, the golden rule as well. I say, I firmly believe in karma. You know what I mean? Like, put out what you want to receive, because it may not come from the individual you're speaking with or, working with at the moment, but it always comes back around and tying into your location. I've always said too, what precedes that is timing, because you might know where that great location is, but if someone already bought the property, typically they don't sell unless there might be a family crisis or, some odd circumstance. But that's where even with the rates where they're at right now, if you can, if you have the cash to play, it is the time to buy, because when the doors fully open, it's not going to be available. So
yeah, you're right. Now, long-term value investors realize you can always refinance, rates, but if you can't get that property, the whole formula doesn't really work if it's a premier location. And I definitely hear what you're saying on that one. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know mindset is a big one for you too. And what is something that's been on your mind lately? Just something you'd like to share of, what's been popping in?
My partner, Douglas Dow, and I, we talk multiple times a day. And poor Doug, we talk, longer than he probably ever imagined. I'm long-winded. He's probably read every single guru book there is in the world, and his memory is amazing. And I often tease him about it that, he's like my own personal Cliff Notes. I don't need to read the books. I just, harass Doug about them. But, just constantly we talk about who, not how. And it's not a specific plug to the book. It's more just a plug to the concept. As many times as I thought I understood it, like a week later, then it dawns on me that I didn't fully understand it, just how powerful it is. And it's one of those ones where I guess it's a pleasant surprise. The more often you realize that you didn't really understand the full significance of it, probably the better, because it means you're growing. So it's definitely a good thing. But you really, we always say these expressions like real estate's a team sport and, be a go-getter. I mean, there's all these nice things, but like, until people really see it, like that's truly when they double down on it, or when they niche into it, is when they start realizing, I go to this Zoom network meetup and, people ask for, oh, you're in Hawaii. Can you, refer me to a broker? I just want to buy a little condo. And you do it, you don't really, just do it to do it. And you do enough of these and people start realizing, oh, okay, this is one of the, nice guys that helps people. All of a sudden, they're more apt to help you. And you're in a Zoom meeting and you just happen to be mentioning you're working on something. You don't even ask for help. And all of a sudden people are DMing you 15 contacts. It really is powerful amongst real estate. And the other asset classes that I've invested and been involved in, it's a very different experience. And I don't mean to stereotype it. I don't know. And I can only talk from my experience, but when I was involved with equities, it was always like a bunch of nerdy guys. I'm old, so it was back in the day. And it was like this, like jockey old boys club of, whose appendage was bigger. And there was never any camaraderie. There wasn't a culture of sharing or let's collaborate together. It was, just, who is the big star and who is the biggest dog in the room because he had the biggest, stock market return or he beat the market. And I'm a competitive person now, but it never really was enjoyable. I'm just like, okay, I made my money. I gotta go brag and have somebody else say, "Oh, Andy, you made 18%. Well, I made 19." I'm like, that's great, but I was happy with my 18. Or,
exactly.
Real estate. You don't really see people doing that in real estate. It's just a very different mindset. When people come in, I always hope that they'll kind of put their egos to the side, because it's not really an ego-driven sport. It's, you're going to be working with people that at one point were your competition. Even you'll see multifamily syndicators. One day you're bidding against each other for the same property, and then next week you could be in another city and it's a larger property. You could be co-sponsoring it because it's too big for either of you to bring down yourself. So I like that it encourages and kind of regulates good behavior on the parts of people. It makes people a little more civil.
I would agree with that too. And I think, going back to your example of my anticipation, it would be the reason why the one felt more flat, whereas real estate more meaningful, is probably the why, right? What I've noticed is that it seems like a lot of us, the why is far beyond just a good financial standing, right? For yourself or family. It's also like a deep yearning, I think, for so many of us, including yourself, to help people grow, to help them to learn. And how do you utilize that knowledge? Because people can learn a lot, they can listen to things, but it's not until you implement that that's when they really start seeing the traction, because otherwise it's words and fluff, right? Kind of without action, things don't go anywhere. And so to your point, I think people just might have a deeper, more meaningful why, which is also a heart-centered thing. And that is why so much is shared.
Yeah, no, I definitely would agree with you on that. Like if you made $1 million buying and selling a stock, it's nice. Don't get me wrong. Everyone likes making $1 million. Yep. People like being right more than they'll care to admit, their ego. It's very nice to be right.
Yeah.
It's a very different thing when you see this physical thing you've created, whether it was on the development side or on the value add side, to see the physical fruit of your intellectual labor, to see happy tenants, to, your other investors were happy along with you, your partners.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of pain and sweat and tears that went into it. Now you've come full circle. It just means more. It means more emotionally. And I think we underestimate. Everybody says, they want to be financially free or financially independent. And, they want to be in a place where they have enough money in the bank account or enough, cash flow coming in to do whatever they want. But much of whatever they want is to have purpose and meaning in their life and connection. And, without it, it's like you're just chasing this endless loop that's not ever going to make you, for most people, endlessly happy. Is just more money doesn't necessarily, throwing more money into the hole isn't going to make you any more happy. I've seen it too often in my life.
Yeah.
Now, sure, there's exceptions. I get it. But I'm just saying generally, I've seen it enough in my 47 years. I saw it enough as a kid growing up in the 80s when money was wild in Hawaii. And then the 90s, that's, at the peak of Japan, like 1989, people were coming to Hawaii with bags of cash to buy homes. So people whose houses were worth, I don't remember in the 90s, but it was, mid hundreds of thousands, were having people knock on their doors offering them $1 million cash for their house. And, the people that sold it, some of them, moved away or then realized, look, crap, I got to go buy a new house and the prices are all higher. This wasn't as great a deal as I thought. I don't know how much happiness it really brought. We had flat prices for like a decade after the Japanese bubble, and it caused a lot of unusual volatility to my community. And, there was houses that sat empty and later went into foreclosure because they had, the bubble. It's great on the up for the bubble, but the burst of the bubble wasn't so pretty. And you just realize that all these transactions and the change to the mindset, I didn't see people happier because of it. So I'm not anti-money. Believe me, I like money just like you and everybody else. I don't want to get teased too much, but I think I see it on LinkedIn a lot where people really have this feeling like, if I only had money, I'd be happy. And I'm thinking, no, if you go and chase that, I feel bad, but good luck. I'm going to bet money against you that you're probably not going to find what you're looking for.
Right. Yeah, it might be a short-term win, right?
Yeah. Well, because the process of how you obtain the money most likely will make you unhappy. And frankly, I think the people that chase money for the sake of money, with some exception, don't actually succeed in the chase because it perverts the process. When you're on the phone with a capital raiser raising money for a deal, you can almost smell desperation.
Yeah.
And you can smell they just want, to close out the deal, and they want their financial and or reputation, thing for closing a deal. And you can tell that they're not really listening to you. They don't really care whether you're 20 or 60. They don't really care if you really should be in a distribution heavy deal because you're close to retirement. Or, they don't really care that you're more of a risk taker and that this deal is kind of vanilla. Or, vice versa. If you're a bit of a like me, I'm a little more on the conservative side, and you can just tell when someone's just talking over you and they're trying to pitch you this home run deal. It's once in a lifetime deal. And you think, but I don't swing for home runs. If you were listening, you would know that. Why are you still going off on this? Why are you still going off on the sales pitch when, clearly you're not listening? And I think it can pervade everything a person does if they're not careful.
I agree completely. And I think too, when people aren't clear of their values, and going back to also the why of, I think a lot of people don't understand how much they genuinely desire to bring in. And I think with that, also aligning that with your values. And I really see it as you're simply solving problems for people. Because as you solve problems, that's how the wealth really comes. And also, tying into what you said of, we are energetic beings. A lot of communication is nonverbal. So to your point of being able to, smell the desperation, it comes through very clear because of that, because so many of our nonverbals are communicating, isn't it like 80% or something like that? And I think
you're definitely true. Yeah. If you go to a Zoom conference and you turn off your video, I've noticed that, sometimes I'm doing it because I'm driving or, for whatever reason, I can't have video. I'm more apt to have people not catch sarcasm. So I can be a very sarcastic person, or they might not sometimes I can just tell in the sound of their voice or their facial expression, they really didn't get the nuance of what I said. And then it's like, okay, stop. We got to go back and let me clarify. Maybe I didn't say it clearly. And I noticed that it happens far more frequently when the camera's off.
I agree. And that's why I think direct communication is good.
Yeah.
The visibility versus, when you...
Go ahead, Heather.
Oh, I was going to say, if you think about it too, I mean, the less direct, so, text or emails, I think that's why so many people get lost, because they can't discern the intention of what the text is about. And especially if there's something big that you really need to meet in person or something like that. All of that, I think, can really create a lot of problems for people.
Yeah, my teenager, he's from this newest generation. He was telling me, "Oh, Dad, it's okay. We don't need facial expressions anymore. We have emojis."
And that's a whole other world, isn't it?
I couldn't help but laugh. I mean, I got his point to some degree, because if I write something sarcastic on LinkedIn, depending on who I wrote it to, or if it's relative to the degree of public nature of it, I better put a smiley face or the crying tears after it to make sure that clearly, I'm kidding. Like if anyone knows me and I put, obviously Jerome Powell is a genius in the comments, clearly Andy's being an incredible smart ass. But, it's like, then you remember yourself, there's, thousands of people reading LinkedIn that lurk in the backgrounds that, may not have read an Andrew post before making fun of Jay Powell. They might not get that Andy's being sarcastic, and that's not his true opinion. No offense, Jerome, if you're watching. I just mostly tease him. That I have to put in the crying face emoji. And it's kind of sad, though, like you say, like a crying face emoji, it's a start, but it nowhere near replaces having lunch and going, and meeting somebody and talking. And you don't get to know a person the same as, over LinkedIn like you would in person. But LinkedIn's great. I mean, I never would have met Chris Borden and Sasha Smith otherwise, and Harmony, Chris's wife. They were in Maui teaching a seminar, and I was like, let's just hop over on a plane and we'll just jump over there. I had to get back bright and early the next morning. It was a miserable trip in the terms of the commute, but it was so wonderful to finally get to meet them in person. And it's very different. Like you say, it's very different meeting in person. I don't meet a lot of people being out in Hawaii, so I was just particularly excited. And then finding out that Chris is gigantic. He's like super tall. I'm a little person. I was like getting neck pain looking up at him, when we're talking.
Right.
I was like, oh, I didn't know you're that gigantic in person. It looked like a big guy on the camera, but I didn't realize, man, you're really tall.
I've had that too, where it's like, wow, different height differences where to your point, you would never know. So it's almost, it takes you off guard at first, because in your mind you have, kind of like a basic height. So that's funny.
I would really encourage more people. I meet so many people that they were surprised that being on a podcast wasn't scary, or they went to their first, conference like a best ever, or the MFCon or something, and they realized, wow, this is just really fun. I saw these people that I knew, or people that say, oh, geez, I don't ever post on LinkedIn. When I say, why? You seem like a pretty opinionated person, and you had, clearly articulate and intelligent. You've got experience.
Right.
Oh, well, geez, I don't want to deal with people writing rude or nasty comments. And I was like, that doesn't really happen that often. I mean, it does occasionally to me. And if it does, I generally have it coming because I push the boundaries a little bit. I'm a little politically incorrect, or, I don't really mince words. So if I get a little off the wall comment, it doesn't really, faze me. But frankly, I was like, doesn't generally happen because generally people conduct themselves professionally on LinkedIn. And if they don't, you just hit block. It's not that hard.
Right. And I personally enjoy your posts. So it's always informational. You always have good knowledge. And
yeah, so. But that's the thing. It's like, then they come back to me. They're like, oh yeah, I wrote a couple posts. And then I'm like, was it that bad? I'm like, no, it was okay. And then I'm like, okay, try the Yona Weiss, 10-day challenge. And they're like, that's impossible. And I was like, no, there's all these alumni. It's their second, third, fourth, fifth time.
Yeah.
And they're like, but how can you do it? I'm like, again, you're missing, like, that's what we were talking about. But the point was, you don't even know what you don't know until you enter an arena. And then I was like, that's how you're going to learn. You start learning about how to generate more impressions and how to write better content and what works and doesn't. Unless you challenge yourself, you're not really going to have the impetus to improve and change, because that's just how life works. Like, how much have you learned from marathon running that if you were just a casual runner, you would never learn, because you would never have been challenged enough to have to learn these new skills, recovery and how to make sure you didn't overtrain and how often you have to buy sneakers. If you're just a casual runner, you can probably get away with quite a few mistakes and not do salt baths and all these fun things you talk about.
Exactly.
To me,
they work. I'm a big believer in them, folks. 1 a week, 4 pounds.
But it's the same concept with Yona's challenge. And I won't go into horribly long detail, but when a person finally realizes, wait, Andy doesn't write 10 consecutive real estate posts during a Yona Weiss challenge. He uses a free scheduling app, sits down on a Saturday or Sunday, does some research, finds concepts he likes, writes 10 posts, and then schedules it for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, for 10 consecutive days. And then granted, there's the following up and reading the comments and replying to the comments. But like, just that little simple example, it's like, you wouldn't have the impetus to learn the social media software that's free, by the way, and really easy, unless you did the challenge. So it's like, that's what I'm always telling people. Like, you need to keep challenging yourself just a little. You don't have to go crazy. I'm not saying sign up for the marathon if you've never run before, something wild. But yeah, it's just funny. At every instance, people come back and like, oh, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was. So I just noticed that almost everybody seems to overestimate how difficult things are, or underestimate their ability to adapt and grow.
I would agree with you completely. And I think too, it's just, you frequently hear people are waiting, for the passion to do something, the excitement or inspiration. And I don't remember who said the quote. There's probably various quotes on it, but essentially it's not until you start doing the work, whatever task it is or project, that then you do get into kind of your groove, and then it becomes easy, or you might actually enjoy it. And I do chuckle. I don't know if you know this story of how I had heard about Jonas. So somehow my very first one with him, I got roped into it. And I'm the type of like, I'll sign up for things. And I always, if I sign up for something, I'm doing it no matter what. And I skimmed through just the beginning. And I was like, I'll sign up. This will be good for me. Didn't read the whole thing.
Oh.
So then for me, it was kind of like, woo, what did I get myself into? Yeah. But I finished it off, made it happen. And it was so funny. I think he had a good laugh about that because I think I've been in three now. And he likes to give me a hard time about that. But I was like, yeah, but everything, I liken it to marathon training. And I always say, if you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing. And I seek out uncomfortable situations to help myself grow. And then it's connecting with the right people and resources so that I can, cross that finish line in a great way and also serve in a better manner. So it's, I love Jonas, and that's how we met back in the day.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the one. I mean, there's so many benefits to the challenge. I mean, the camaraderie, the people you meet, I mean, the skills you had to obtain learning it. I mean, it's just one example of many, like that I always, just tell people, like, you generally overestimate how horrible things are going to be. And you underestimate how resourceful humans are. Incredibly adaptable. And with enough effort, they generally rise to the top. They can come to the challenge and overcome it. It's kind of funny how often that happens. Like with my 14-year-old son, he never really liked school so much, and I always would tell him, I was like, no, you can get better grades if you wanted, you just don't want to, and he would tell me, no, I already work hard. And I'm like, no, son, I know what hard work is. Let's not mistake what you're doing for hard work. You're doing enough work. Right. You're doing enough work. Maybe you're not, your heart's really not into it. And then he gets into high school. I mean, not that he's getting straight A's, but his grades are substantially better than what they were before. I think it's just because now he actually enjoys the subject matter better. He's liking his teachers and all these things. But he did have to admit to me, he's like, oh, okay, I get it now why you were on me. It's like, I thought I couldn't do better. So it was like, what was the point of trying harder if I can't? And that's like, well, yeah. So it's like, aren't you kind of insulting? You're selling yourself short. Like, why would you do that? Like, the world will more than beat you up and chew you out and stomp on you. Why would you ever do that to yourself? Believe in yourself, give yourself a chance. Like, what's the worst that could happen? Oh my God, you got an A- or a B+ and you poured your heart and soul into it. Really? If that's the worst case scenario, what's so rough about life, So it's just, I see it all the time. I meet limited partners that, will say, oh, I couldn't be involved in that asset class. It's too complicated. And I'm thinking, no, it's not. Interview like 5 different sponsors and ask them questions. And, they'll tell you what content to read or watch, and you'll be up to speed and no problem. And, a year later, I bump into them, and all of a sudden now they're on the active side of that asset. I'm like, wait, you told me it was too complicated to be an LP. Now you're on the active side. They're like, I know. Shut up, Andy.
Maybe they were fueled by your question of like, why are you selling yourself short, right?
I mean, I see it, you would agree. I see it all the time of people selling themselves short. I get the danger. I've seen, we both know, we see people that are overconfident. That's, I'm not sure which one's more dangerous. Frankly, I think underconfident is worse because you're not even in the ballpark or the arena, then you're really not even in the game. But obviously being overconfident would be a terrible thing because, it leads you to lose money or make mistakes or offend people.
Right.
That's my biggest thing, honestly. Like, I constantly meet people that underestimate their own abilities or just they overestimate how hard things are. And, we talk, there's a reason why on you see in the comments on a lot of the stuff I write, when the older guard kind of writes in, it's a very common theme. The only thing they ever really harp on is perseverance.
Right.
So it's funny. It's almost like a correlation. Like, the older the gentleman or lady that writes in, like almost with just almost with no exception, when you're talking about skills or traits or whatever the post was, they always start hammering back on only one theme, and it's always perseverance. And then, if you get them going, they'll explain the story that, they started out in a mastermind, and, 30 years ago, there was the 10 of them in a brown lunch bag meetup. And there was guys smarter than them or more accomplished in that meeting. And the only ones that are left and still making a lot of money and succeeding were the ones with perseverance. They weren't necessarily the smartest or the most charismatic or name it. It was just frankly on perseverance. Like, it's just literally staying power is why they're still here making money. And a lot of guys, gave up and left, or 2008 got rough and they just quit and never did it again.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. So here's a question for you as we begin to wrap this up. If you were to go back into a time machine, Andrew, say 10, 20 years ago, what advice would you have for yourself?
Oh, well, very easy for me as an introvert. I mean, it would be a little different because 20 years ago, we didn't have Zoom and, things are a little different from a technology and social standpoint. But I definitely would have I would have told myself to at least go to the physical REI meetups. And at that time, I was able to physically travel. I have a health issue. I don't travel anymore. But, the whole lone wolf thing, man, if I could do that over again, I mean, in a heartbeat. I can think of very specific, even relationships that I squandered because the person wanted to help or be a mentor, but the student wasn't ready. And I can only imagine how different my life would be, not even just financially, but just in terms of happiness and learning and everything, how different things would have been if I had been ready to be the student.
That's a big one. And, I would say that hits home for me too. Of years ago, I was in that same bucket, if you want to say, of you have to work hard and do it all your own and this, that, and the other thing. And I think some of those things are instilled in us when we're younger, and they can help you to a certain level. But then to your point, then it crosses a divide and it actually hinders your growth. So I think that is a great awareness, and something also that our guests can take with them too, of, be open to accepting the mentorship and receiving help and helping in areas for others that aren't as far as you, so that they can grow and establish their real estate careers further and investments. And it's definitely a gift that gives. So I appreciate that. And I'm sure our audience will enjoy that reminder. So I just wanted to thank you for having this great conversation today, Andrew, and sharing your pearls. And I hope that people do follow and connect with you on LinkedIn. And is there any other way that you'd like for people to connect, or is it the Andrew Rosenberg on LinkedIn?
LinkedIn's a great way. I anybody who DMs me or hits connection requests, generally I'll accept. And then I always tell people, don't be shy. I'm an open book. You can ask me, anything. 99.9% of the time I'm going to answer, and I like to help people. It's not even about business at this point. I mean, I just enjoy it. It's just fun. And I'm always excited to meet new people. And, one of the most successful people I've ever interacted with on a level that seems, at a financial level or celebrity level, that almost seems hard to fathom. I mean, stratosphere is higher. I asked him one time, why do you even talk to me? I'm like a nobody. I mean, we're on absurdly different stratosphere levels. And he said there was, as simple as two reasons. Like, one, I just enjoy it. I don't really think twice about it. I said, but if I thought about it and gave you more of a thoughtful answer, he said, I had several wonderful mentors. It would just be absolutely disrespectful on my part if I didn't. So many people were influential to get me to where I am. And if I didn't turn around and do the same, like, he's like, I can't even fathom it. It would just be, very disrespectful. And he kept working on that word. He had such an admiration for the gentleman that had helped him, get to where he had been, that it was like inconceivable to him. It was like, what do you, it's not even a choice. Like, it's a compulsion. Like, I have no choice. I have to be this way. I really loved that answer that he had given me in private. I just thought the world of him for that. I was like, wow, what a great guy.
Definitely.
And then it's like, well, no surprise he got to the stratosphere that he's in, because if he has that kind of mentality for all these years or decades he's been, in the business, like, well, clearly that would have a huge impact on his success, right?
Oh, definitely. And I think, to your point, is when people are touched, you know what I mean, just in a deep way, and I'm sure he appreciated your authenticity, your knowledge, you know what I mean, and that shines through in your posts and in different conversations and things like that. So I think that's, you know, something really important. And then also the giving back. And I agree, it's something you just feel in the core because you're so grateful, because no one can do it alone. And it's unfortunate that people continue to operate in that manner. It's a very hard path.
Yeah, I think Zoom is really incredible, though. I mean, I'm seeing, you know, really barriers breaking down by geography. You know, there's not like an East Coast and a West Coast and a Midwest and a, you know, Southeast anymore. There's so many people meeting each other. And now when they go to these conferences, they kind of pre-know each other from LinkedIn. They've seen the face before. Right. They've been on a Zoom call. I just in the last, I mean, the difference from 3 years ago is amazing. How much more connected our, you know, commercial real estate sector has become. I mean, it's just amazing. You know, it's kind of nice that a good thing came out of a terrible thing like a pandemic, right?
Exactly. Sometimes disaster brings about beautiful things. But well, on that note, Andrew, thank you so much for joining me today. And with this beautiful thing of Zoom and LinkedIn and social media, I hope that our guests do reach out to you to learn from you and also to create those connections as well. So thank you very much.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks so much, Heather.